The Temple of Eternal Bonds had never witnessed such a gathering. Heliss stood at the altar of Thalandor's most sacred ground, her hands trembling beneath the ceremonial silk that draped her wrists. 10,000 wolves filled the stone amphitheater, their bodies pressed together on tiered benches that climbed toward a winter sky heavy with clouds, nobles in velvet, warriors in leather. Commoners who had traveled for weeks just to witness this moment, the royal bonding. She should have felt joy. Should have felt the flutter of anticipation that every unmated female dreamed of when imagining this day. Instead, ice had settled in her chest 3 days ago and refused to thaw. Because Kalin had not spoken to her since the night they shared. Her fingers drifted to her lower belly, hidden beneath the flowing white gown. A secret lived there now. A secret she had planned to whisper to him tonight, after the ceremony sealed them together forever. The crowd fell silent. Heliss lifted her gaze to the temple entrance, where the Alpha King of Thalandor was making his descent. Kalin moved through the parted crowd like a blade through water. His shoulders filled the ceremonial black and gold, muscles coiled beneath fabric that did nothing to soften the predatory grace of his stride. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from mountain stone. Sharp cheekbones. A jaw that spoke of centuries of royal bloodline, and eyes the color of molten amber that had once looked at her like she was the answer to every prayer he had never dared to speak. Those eyes found her now. They held nothing. Heliss's breath caught. She searched his face for any flicker of the man who had pressed her against the wall of the eastern garden just 1 moon ago. The man whose voice had cracked when he whispered that the arranged marriage his council demanded had become something he desperately wanted. The man who had claimed her body with a ferocity that left bruises she still wore beneath her gown. "You are mine," he had growled against her throat. "Politics brought us together, but fate made you my true mate. I feel the bond, Heliss. I feel it in my bones." She had believed every word. Now he climbed the altar steps with the mechanical precision of a soldier, not a lover. His gaze swept over her face as if cataloging a stranger. Something was wrong. "Citizens of Thalandor," the high priestess announced, her ancient voice echoing off sacred stones. "We gather to witness the bonding of Alpha King Kalin, blood of the first pack, to Lady Heliss of House Ashford. Let any who contest this union speak now, or let the bond be sealed in eternal silence." The pause stretched like a held breath. Heliss's heart slammed against her ribs. She willed Kalin to look at her, to truly see her, to show any sign that the connection she had felt between them was not a delusion conjured by a desperate heart. His eyes remained flat, dead, empty as a frozen lake. "I contest." The word came from Kalin's own mouth. The crowd erupted in gasps. The high priestess stumbled backward, and Heliss felt the ground tilt beneath her feet as her entire world began to collapse. "My king," the priestess breathed, "you cannot contest your own bonding." "I can." Kalin's voice rang across the amphitheater, cold and absolute. "And I do. I will not bond myself to a female who spread her legs for my enemy while wearing my courtship gift." The words struck Heliss like physical blows. She staggered, her hand flying to the delicate silver chain at her throat, the necklace Kalin himself had clasped around her neck the night he first kissed her. "What?" The word came out broken. "Kalin, I never—" Silence. His command cracked through the air with alpha force. Heliss's wolf cowered inside her chest, whimpering at the dominance radiating from the man she loved. "I have seen the evidence. Letters in your own hand, witnesses who watched you slip into Lord Draven's chambers." "That is a lie." "The only lie?" Kalin snarled, finally showing emotion. But it was rage, not love. "Was every word you whispered when you pretended to want me. Did you think I would not discover the truth? Did you think you could make a fool of the Alpha King and face no consequences?" Tears streamed down Heliss's cheeks. She reached for him, desperate to touch him, to force him to feel the bond that pulsed between them. He stepped back, as if her fingers carried plague. I, Kalin, Alpha King of Thalandor, reject the arrangement with House Ashford. Each word fell like a headsman's axe. Lady Heliss is banished from this court. She is stripped of her title, her dowry, and any claim to protection under my rule. No, Heliss whispered. Kalin, please. Remove her. Guards materialized at her sides. Rough hands gripped her arms, dragging her backward down the altar steps. The crowd parted, but not in reverence. In disgust. She heard the whispers. Whore. Traitor. Fortune hunter. Through tear-blurred vision, Airlie saw a figure standing in the nobles' gallery. Vesper of House Blackmere. The woman's silver hair caught the winter light. Her ice-blue eyes glittered with triumph, and on her lips curved a smile so satisfied, so knowing, that Heliss understood in a single devastating heartbeat exactly who had orchestrated her destruction. But there was no time to scream the accusation. The guards hauled her through the temple doors. The last thing she saw before they slammed shut was Kalin turning away, already walking toward the gallery where Vesper awaited with open arms. He did not look back. He did not hesitate. And deep in Airliss's womb, the child she had planned to announce began the first day of its existence in exile. The guards threw her out through the servants' gate like refuse. Airliss landed hard on frozen cobblestones, her ceremonial gown tearing against the rough stone. Snow had begun to fall, fat, heavy flakes that settled on her bare shoulders and melted against skin still flushed with humiliation. She did not feel the cold. She felt nothing at all. Somehow, she found her feet. Somehow, she stumbled through the back alleys of the capital, past market stalls being shuttered for winter, past taverns already filling with wolves eager to gossip about the scandal they had witnessed. Did you see her face? The king looked murderous. House Ashford will never recover from this shame. Airliss pressed her hands over her ears and ran. Her family's townhouse loomed ahead, but torches already burned at the gate, and she recognized her father's steward barking orders to the household guard. Orders from the palace. Lady Airliss is not to be admitted. House Ashford formally disowns. She did not stay to hear more. Her own family cast her out without even hearing her defense, without even asking if the accusations were true. But why would they doubt their king? Airliss changed direction, her slippered feet sliding on icy streets. She had nowhere to go, no allies, no resources. Nothing but the gown on her back and the child growing in her belly. Kalin's child. The thought cracked through her numbness, and suddenly she was sobbing. Great, heaving wails that she muffled against her palm as she ducked into a shadowed alley. He had touched her with such reverence, had looked at her like she was sacred, had whispered promises that made her believe, for the first time in her life, that she was more than a political pawn to be traded between houses. And it had all been a lie, or had it? The question surfaced through her grief. Those empty eyes at the altar, the mechanical way he had moved, the total absence of the warmth she had felt pulsing through their connection just days before. Something was wrong with him. But what did it matter now? Whether he had been enchanted or simply deceived, the result was the same. She was ruined, homeless, carrying the bastard of a king who had publicly named her a whore. Airliss pressed her forehead against the cold stone wall and made herself breathe. She could not stay in the capital. By morning, her face would be known to every guard, every merchant, every wolf with eyes and ears. The king's rejected almost mate would find no shelter here. But beyond the mountains, in the northern territories where Thalandor's reach grew thin, there were villages so remote that news from the capital took months to arrive. Places where a young widow with healing skills might find refuge, might build a quiet life, might raise her child far from the politics and betrayals of the royal court. Airliss wiped her tears with shaking hands. She stripped off her jewelry, The courtship necklace, the pearl earrings, the gold bracelet that marked her as nobility, and wrapped them in a scrap of fabric torn from her hem. These would buy her passage, would purchase supplies and silence. And then she would disappear. As she slipped toward the northern gate, Heliss did not see the figure watching from the temple tower. She did not see the amber eyes that flickered with sudden, terrible confusion, as if waking from a dream. And she did not hear the howl that split the winter sky 3 hours later, when Kalin burst into her empty chambers at the Ashford townhouse and found nothing but a farewell letter written in a hand he had come to love. By the time he read her words, Heliss was already gone, and the blizzard had swallowed her trail completely. 4 months later, the village of Brier Hollow had almost forgotten it harbored a secret. Heliss had arrived in the dead of winter, half frozen and barely conscious, discovered by a woodcutter on the mountain pass. The village healer had nursed her back to health, and when Heliss demonstrated her own gift for healing, a talent she had hidden at court, where such common skills were beneath a noblewoman, the old woman had welcomed her as an apprentice. A young widow, Heliss had claimed, fleeing grief and seeking peace. No one questioned the story. In Brier Hollow, such things were common. The northern territories attracted those who wished to be forgotten. Now spring struggled to break through the mountain snow, and Heliss had become simply the healer's assistant who lived in the cottage at the edge of the pine forest. She delivered babies. She set broken bones. She brewed remedies for coughs that plagued the village children. And every night, she lay awake with her hands pressed to her swelling belly, feeling the life inside her kick against her palms. "You are strong," she whispered in the darkness, so strong, like him. The thought of Kalin still sent pain lancing through her chest. 4 months, and the wound had not begun to close. If anything, it had festered, growing rawer with each passing day, because something was wrong with the bond. Among wolf kind, rejection was supposed to sever the mating connection completely. When a male publicly denounced a female, especially with the brutal finality Kalin had displayed, the bond should have dissolved within weeks. The phantom pull toward him should have faded. The awareness of his presence should have disappeared entirely. Instead, Heliss felt him more strongly than ever. The connection hummed beneath her skin like a second heartbeat. It flared with heat when she dreamed of him. Vivid, desperate dreams where he was searching for something. Tearing through forests and villages with golden eyes blazed with anguish. She would wake gasping, her body aching for his touch. It made no sense. The bond only strengthens between true mates. The old healer Brina had told her once, when Heliss made the mistake of asking about such things in abstract terms. If a male rejects his fated one, his wolf will eventually drive him mad. The beast cannot survive separation from its other half. Heliss had changed the subject quickly, but the words haunted her. True mates. Fated ones. The rarest and most sacred of bonds, appearing perhaps once in a generation. Could Kalin have been her true mate? Could the connection between them have been something more than political convenience and physical attraction? And if so, what did that mean about the rejection? A knock at her cottage door scattered her thoughts. Heliss rose awkwardly. Her belly had grown large enough now to affect her balance, and crossed the small room. Through the frosted window she could see young Mira, the blacksmith's daughter, shifting from foot to foot in the morning chill. "What is it, child?" Mira's face was pale with excitement. "Traders have come, Mistress Wren, from the south. They carry news." Helliss's heart seized. She had chosen the name Wren for its plainness, its forgettability. But she had not been able to fully escape her need to know what happened in the world beyond these mountains. "What news?" she asked carefully. "The Alpha King," Mira breathed. "They say he has gone completely mad." The floor tilted beneath Helliss's feet. "Mad?" she managed. Mira nodded vigorously, her eyes wide with the thrill of gossip. The traders say he has torn the kingdom apart searching for someone, a woman. He has deployed his entire guard, offered impossible rewards, threatened noble houses who cannot produce information he seeks. Heliss gripped the doorframe. Inside her belly, the baby kicked sharply. They say the crops are failing in the eastern provinces, that wolves are going feral across the territory, that the king himself has not slept in months. His advisors fear he is losing himself to his beast. A wolf separated from its true mate. What woman? Heliss whispered. No one knows for certain. The king will not speak her name, but the traders heard rumors that she was someone from the court. Someone he rejected publicly and has regretted ever since. Heliss's knees threatened to buckle. They say he offers 50,000 gold pieces for information leading to her discovery, and that anyone who harms her will face a death so terrible that even the southern kingdoms have heard the threats. 50,000 gold. A fortune beyond imagining. The affairs of kings are no concern of ours, Heliss heard herself say. Thank your father for the news, child. But after Mira had gone, skipping back toward the village with her gossip, Heliss sank into her chair and pressed both hands to her thundering heart. He was searching for her. Why would Kalin tear his kingdom apart for a woman he had publicly destroyed? Why would he be losing his mind over a female he had named a whore before 10,000 witnesses? Unless Vesper's poison had worn off. Unless he had woken from whatever manipulation had stolen his will and discovered the truth too late. Unless the bond between them was exactly what she had feared and hoped it might be. Movement at the tree line caught her attention. Heliss's breath stopped. A shape stood between the ancient pines. Large, four-legged, dark gray fur dusted with snow. A wolf. Not a village wolf. Not a wild animal. This creature stood with an intelligence in its amber eyes that marked it as shifter. And it was watching her cottage with an intensity that made every instinct in her body scream. Before she could move, before she could even draw breath to scream, the wolf threw back its head and howled. The sound echoed off the mountains, a signal, a summons, and deep in her belly, Heliss felt her child respond with a kick so powerful it stole her breath. They had found her. Heliss did not move. She stood frozen at her window, watching as 2 more wolves emerged from the pines, then 3 more, then a dozen. Their pelts ranging from charcoal to silver, their eyes gleaming with predatory focus. Not hunters, soldiers. The king's guard ran in formation even in wolf form. She recognized the disciplined spacing, the way they flanked the lead wolf without crowding. These were the elite warriors of Thalandor, wolves who had sworn blood oaths to protect their alpha. And they had found her. The bond beneath her skin flared with sudden searing heat. Heliss gasped, her hand flying to her chest as warmth spread through her veins like liquid fire. It pulsed in time with her heartbeat, each throb carrying a sensation she could not name. Longing, desperation, a searching so vast it threatened to swallow her whole. These feelings were not hers. He feels it too, she whispered, the old healer's words echoing in her memory. If a male rejects his fated one, his wolf will eventually drive him mad. A sharp knock rattled her door. Heliss's gaze snapped from the window. The wolves remained in the tree line, watching, which meant someone in human form stood on her threshold. Another knock, more insistent. Mistress Wren. A male voice, deep and unfamiliar. Please open the door. We intend you no harm. She almost laughed at that. Wolves who hunted a pregnant woman across 400 miles intended her no harm. How reassuring. But what choice did she have? Running was impossible. They would track her by scent before she made it a quarter mile. Hiding was futile. And if she did not open the door willingly, they would simply break it down. At least she could control this moment. Heliss grabbed the iron poker from beside her hearth and moved toward the door. Her free hand curved protectively around her belly, where the child had finally stilled, as if listening. She opened the door. 3 men stood on her threshold. 2 were clearly warriors. Massive frames, alert postures, eyes that catalogued every shadow and corner of her small cottage. But it was the 3rd man who drew her attention. He was older than the others, his dark hair streaked with gray, his weathered face marked by decades of service. A scar curved from his temple to his jaw, pale against wind-darkened skin, and his eyes, a deep, familiar amber, held something that looked almost like relief. "My lady," he said. The title made Heliss flinch. "My name is Wren," she said steadily, despite the terror clawing at her throat. "I am a healer's apprentice, nothing more." The scarred man's expression shifted to something like sympathy. "You are Heliss of House Ashford, formerly betrothed to the Alpha King. You carry his child in your womb and his claiming mark beneath your gown." Helliss's blood turned to ice. "How do you know about the mark?" She had told no one. The bite Kalin had given her during their last night together. A secret claim, pressed into the curve of her hip in a moment of passion so fierce it had left them both trembling, was hidden beneath layers of fabric. "Because the king described it to me personally," the man said quietly. "Because he has not stopped searching for you since the night you disappeared. And because I have served the Valdris bloodline for 40 years, my lady. I know the signs of a true mate bond." The words hit her like a physical blow. True mate. "I am Corvin," the man continued, "first beta to Alpha King Kalin, and I have traveled a very long way to find you." Heliss wanted to refuse them entry, but her legs were shaking, her mark was burning, and the baby had begun to move again. Restless, agitated kicks that seemed to respond to the proximity of wolves who shared its blood. She stepped aside. Corvin entered alone, leaving the guards at the door. His gaze moved across her modest cottage, the drying herbs, the simple furniture, the narrow bed where she had spent countless nights crying into her pillow. He paused at the window, watching the wolves who still waited among the pines. "The king did not reject you," he said without preamble. Helliss's knees nearly buckled. "What?" "The morning of your bonding ceremony, someone slipped a compound into his wine. We believe it was derived from moonsbane root mixed with several other rare substances our healers have not yet fully identified." Corvin turned to face her, his expression grim. The poison did not merely incapacitate him. It severed his wolf from his conscious mind. It made him susceptible to commands implanted through dark magic. "That is impossible," Heliss breathed. "We thought so too, until the effects began to wear off 3 days after the ceremony." Corvin's voice hardened. "The king collapsed in the middle of a council meeting. When he woke, he was screaming your name. He remembered nothing of the rejection, nothing of the accusations. The first thing he did was run to the Ashford townhouse to find you." Heliss sank into the nearest chair, her mind reeling. Poisoned. He had been poisoned. The empty eyes, the mechanical movements, the complete absence of recognition. It had not been betrayal. It had been violation. "Who?" she demanded. "Who did this to him?" "House Blackmere." The name fell from Corvin's lips like a curse. "Lady Vespera has wanted the Alpha throne since she came of age. Her family has been positioning her as a candidate for years, with you removed, and the king bound to her by witnessed oath." "He bonded with her?" The words tore from Helliss's throat. "He spoke the words of intent while under the poison's influence. The ceremony was performed 2 days after your exile." Corvin's jaw tightened. "But he has not touched her, has not even been in the same room with her since he regained his senses. He ordered her confined to her family's wing pending investigation." A sob built in Helliss's chest. She pressed her palm to her mouth, trying to contain the storm of emotions threatening to break free. All these months, all this pain, and it had been built on lies. "The king is not well," Corvin continued quietly. The bond between true mates cannot survive separation. His wolf has been fighting for dominance since the moment he understood what had happened. The searching, the sleeplessness, the territory falling into chaos. These are all symptoms of a male being torn apart from the inside. And if he does not find his mate? Heliss whispered. Corvin's silence was answer enough. A wolf separated from its true mate would eventually lose itself to the beast, would go feral, would become something monstrous and unreachable. And an alpha king, with power as vast as Kalin's, would destroy everything he had built before the madness consumed him completely. I cannot go back, Heliss heard herself say. Vespera will kill me. She will kill my child. Which is why I have not told the king exactly where you are. Corvin reached into his coat and withdrew a folded letter. This was intercepted by our spy master 3 weeks ago. Heliss took the paper with numb fingers. The seal was broken, but she recognized the serpent crest pressed into the black wax. House Blackmere. The message was brief. The false mate has been located in the Northern Territories. Elimination has been arranged for the new moon. Long live Queen Vespera. Helliss's blood turned to ice. Assassins, she breathed. 3 of them, according to our intelligence. Skilled killers who specialize in making deaths appear accidental. Corvin's expression was grave. The new moon rises in 4 days, my lady. We must move you before... A howl split the evening air, not the signal howl from earlier. This was different. Sharp. Urgent. Warning. Corvin was on his feet instantly, his body already shifting toward the door. They have found us. Who? Heliss demanded, struggling to rise despite her heavy belly. Through her window she could see the king's wolves breaking formation. They were no longer watching the cottage. They were facing the forest beyond, hackles raised, teeth bared. And emerging from the shadows between the pines came wolves she did not recognize. Darker, larger, moving with the coordinated precision of predators who had hunted together for years. 3 figures walked at their center, cloaked in black, their faces hidden behind masks carved from wolf bone. The Blackmere assassins had arrived. The first arrow shattered Helliss's window before she could draw breath to scream. Corvin moved with supernatural speed, shoving her toward the back of the cottage as glass exploded across the floor. She caught a glimpse of dark liquid glistening on the arrowhead. Poison. The 2 guards burst through the front door, already shifting mid-stride. Their human forms dissolved into massive wolves that lunged toward the tree line with snarls of fury. The cellar, Corvin commanded. Now. There is no way out from the cellar. You only need to survive until reinforcements arrive. Another arrow punched through the wooden wall, embedding itself inches from Helliss's head. The king is less than an hour behind us. He has been tracking you through the bond. Helliss's heart seized. He is coming here? He has been running for 3 days straight. Nothing we said could stop him. Corvin pulled a long knife from his belt and pressed it into her trembling hands. The blade is silver-edged. It will wound even a shifted wolf. Use it only if you must. Before Heliss could respond, a howl of agony erupted from outside, one of the guards. Then the sickening sound of a body hitting the ground. Corvin's eyes flickered amber, his wolf rising to the surface. Stay hidden. Whatever happens, do not come out until you hear my voice, or the king's. He did not wait for her answer. His body exploded into wolf form, a great gray beast with the scarred face of a warrior who had survived 100 battles. He crashed through the ruined window and disappeared into the chaos outside. Heliss stood frozen in her destroyed cottage, the silver knife clutched in her white-knuckled grip. Through the shattered glass she could see shapes moving in the darkness. Wolves clashing with wolves, the flash of blades, the spray of blood across snow. Her mark burned with renewed intensity. And then she felt it. Not just heat, but him. Kalin's presence crashed against her consciousness like a wave breaking against rocks. Rage, so vast it threatened to consume everything. Fear, sharp, and unfamiliar. And beneath it all, a desperate, clawing need that matched the aching emptiness she had carried for 4 months. He was close, so close she could almost taste him. Through the window, she watched in horror as Corvin's wolf form was thrown against a tree with bone-cracking force. He struggled to rise, blood matting his gray fur, but 2 of the assassin wolves circled him with patient menace. The third assassin, still in human form, a crossbow raised, was walking toward the cottage, toward her. The false mate, a female voice called from behind the bone mask. Lady Vespera sends her regards. Heliss backed away from the window, her heart hammering. The cellar. She needed to reach the cellar. But her foot caught on overturned furniture. She stumbled, fell hard on her side, the knife skittering across the floor. Pain lanced through her belly. The baby. No, 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 no. Heliss curled around her stomach, gasping as the pain intensified. This was wrong. Too early. The child was not due for another 2 months. The cottage door splintered inward. The masked assassin stood in the doorway, crossbow aimed at Heliss's chest. Such a shame. I had hoped for more of a challenge. Her finger tightened on the trigger. And then the wall exploded. Not the door. Not the window. The entire eastern wall of the cottage simply ceased to exist as something massive crashed through it like a battering ram made of shadow and fury. A wolf the size of a warhorse stood in the wreckage, its fur black as a moonless night, its eyes blazing with golden fire so bright it cast shadows across the room. The assassin spun, her crossbow swinging toward the new threat. She never completed the motion. Jaws closed around her arm with a sickening crunch. The wolf shook her like a rag doll, the crossbow clattering uselessly to the floor. A single savage twist, and the assassin's body went limp. The wolf dropped the corpse and turned. Those burning golden eyes fixed on Heliss. She could not breathe, could not move, could only stare at the creature that radiated power like heat from a forge fire. The wolf approached her slowly, each step deliberate. Blood dripped from its muzzle. Its massive body blocked out what remained of the moonlight. But when it finally stood before her, it did not attack. It lowered its great head and pressed its nose gently to her swollen belly. The baby kicked, and the wolf made a sound that was not quite a growl, not quite a whimper, but something between. A noise of such profound emotion that it cracked something in Heliss's chest. "Kalin," she whispered. The shift happened in the space between heartbeats. One moment, a wolf stood before her. The next, a man knelt in the wreckage of her cottage, his hands hovering over her stomach as if he was afraid to touch her. He looked up, and Heliss saw that the Alpha King was weeping. Heliss had imagined this moment 1,000 times during her months of exile. She had imagined rage, cold indifference, perhaps him dragging her back to Thalandor in chains to face punishment for fleeing his kingdom without permission. She had never imagined him kneeling before her in the wreckage of her cottage, tears streaming down his face, his entire body trembling with barely contained emotion. "You are alive," Kalin breathed. His voice was raw, broken, as if he had been screaming for months. "You are alive, and you are—" His eyes dropped to her swollen belly. His hand reached toward it, then stopped, hovering inches from her dress. "May I?" he asked. The question shattered something in Heliss's chest. The Alpha King, the most powerful wolf in 3 kingdoms, was asking permission to touch his own child. She took his hand and pressed it to her stomach. The baby kicked immediately. Strong, insistent movements that seemed to recognize its father's presence. Kalin's breath caught. His palm flattened against her belly, feeling for more, and his expression crumpled with an emotion so raw that Heliss had to look away. "A child," he whispered. "Our child." "Heliss, why did you not tell me?" The question broke the spell. She pulled back, yanking herself away from his touch. The warmth of the moment dissolved into the cold reality of everything that had happened. Tell you? Her voice came out sharper than she intended. When should I have done that, Kalin? Before or after you named me a whore in front of 10,000 witnesses? He flinched as if she had struck him. I did not. I was there. The words tore from her throat, carrying 4 months of grief and rage. I stood at that altar in the gown I had spent weeks choosing, waiting to become your mate. And you looked at me like I was nothing. You accused me of spreading my legs for your enemy. You had me dragged from the temple like refuse. Heliss, please. Kalin rose to his feet, his hands reaching for her. I was poisoned. Corvin told you. The black mirrors? How convenient. She stepped back, putting distance between them. A poison that makes you forget everything, that absolves you of every cruel word. You think I wanted this? His voice hardened, and for the first time she saw the alpha beneath the grief, the powerful, dangerous male who had conquered 3 rival territories before his 25th year. You think any part of this has been convenient? I have spent 4 months hunting for you, 4 months fighting my wolf for control, 4 months watching my kingdom crumble while I tore apart every village, every forest, and every corner of the realm searching for the mate who vanished without a word. Because you rejected me. Because I was violated. The roar shook what remained of the cottage walls. Do you think I chose to wake up bound to a woman I despise? Do you think I wanted to discover that the female I love was gone, exiled by my own command, while my bond screamed in my chest and I had no idea if you were even alive? His voice cracked on the last word. Helliss's anger faltered. The bond. She had felt it too, every day of her exile. The burning that should have faded but never did. The ache that followed her into sleep. The sense of him searching, always searching, like a lighthouse she could never quite reach. I thought you had thrown me away, she whispered. I thought everything between us was a lie, that I was just a convenient body until you were forced to choose someone worthy of your crown. Kalin closed the distance between them in 2 strides. His hands cupped her face, tilting it up until she had no choice but to meet his gaze. You are worthy of everything, he said fiercely. You are my mate, my true mate. The bond recognized you before I even knew your name. Do you think I would give that up for politics? For power? For anything in this world or any other? A sob escaped her throat. She had built walls around her broken heart, had forced herself to keep functioning for the sake of the child. But now, with his hands on her face and his words cracking through her defenses, those walls were crumbling to dust. I waited for you that night, she choked out. After the ceremony, I was going to tell you about the baby. I had practiced the words 100 times, and when you did not come, I went looking for you. Instead, I found you walking toward Vesper's chambers while the court celebrated your engagement to her. Kalin's expression shattered. Heliss, do you know what that felt like? Carrying your child while watching you choose another woman? He caught her wrist and pressed her palm flat against his chest. His heart thundered beneath her fingers, wild and desperate. Yes, he said quietly. I know exactly what it felt like, because I have spent every moment since that night living with the knowledge that I failed you, that something was done to me that made me betray the most important person in my existence. A howl rose from outside, Corvin's signal. The remaining assassins had been dealt with. But the storm was far from over. We cannot stay here, Kalin said, his tactical mind already shifting. The Black Mirrors will send more when these do not report. We need to reach the mountain pass before dawn. I cannot travel, Heliss protested. The baby... I will carry you myself if I must. His hands moved to her belly again, cradling the curve with impossible gentleness. I will not lose either of you, not now, not ever again. They had been traveling for 6 hours when the storm hit. Heliss rode in front of Kalin on his massive black destrier, his arm wrapped securely around her waist, his body shielding her from the biting wind. She had protested at first. She could ride her own horse, but he had simply lifted her onto his saddle and silenced her objections with a look that brooked no argument. "My wolf needs you close," he had said, his voice rough. "4 months of separation nearly destroyed us both. I will not let you out of my sight until the bond is complete and every threat to your safety is eliminated." So she had relented, leaning back against his chest, feeling his heartbeat against her spine. The baby seemed to approve. For the first time in months, the child had settled into peaceful stillness. But as they climbed higher into the mountain pass, the weather turned savage. Snow came first, not gentle flakes, but sheets of ice that cut like blades. Then wind, howling through the peaks with such force that even Kalin's war-trained horse stumbled. "We cannot continue," Corvin shouted over the gale. The beta had shifted back to human form to ride, but his wounds from the assassin attack were still healing. "The pass will be impassable within the hour." "There is shelter ahead," one of the scouts called back. "An old hunting cabin, half a mile west." Kalin did not hesitate. "Lead the way." The cabin materialized through the white curtain of snow like a ghost, small, ancient, built of stone and timber by some long-forgotten lord who had hunted these mountains generations ago. It was also, Heliss realized as they dismounted, barely large enough for 2 people. "The others will shelter in the stable," Kalin said, reading her expression. "The horses need protection from the wind, and Corvin's wounds require tending away from the cold." He pushed open the cabin door. 1 room, a single hearth, a narrow bed built into the wall. 1 bed. "Kalin, I will sleep on the floor. You have been running for 3 days. You need rest." "What I need," he said quietly, "is to know you are safe. The floor will serve." But as the night wore on and the blizzard raged against the cabin walls, Heliss watched Kalin shiver on the cold stone despite his wolf's natural heat. She watched him fight to stay awake, his body desperate for rest, but his mind refusing to surrender vigilance. And she made a decision. "Come here." His head snapped up. "What?" "The bed is small, but we will both fit. And if you collapse from exhaustion, you will be useless when the Blackmeres send their next attack." Something flickered in his golden eyes. Hope, quickly suppressed. "Heliss, I do not want you to feel—" "I feel cold," she interrupted, "and tired, and very pregnant. Will you stop being noble for 1 night and keep me warm?" For a long moment he simply stared at her. Then, slowly, he rose from the floor. The bed was narrow. There was no way to share it without touching. Heliss found herself pressed against Kalin's chest, her back to his front, his arm curving protectively over her belly. The baby kicked against his palm. "Does that hurt?" he murmured against her hair. "No. It is comforting, I think. The child knows its father." Kalin's breath shuddered. "I have missed so much. You will miss nothing else." The words slipped out before she could stop them. A promise she had not meant to make. His arm tightened around her. "Heliss, do not speak." She pressed back against him, feeling the hard planes of his body, the warmth that seeped into her aching muscles. "Just stay. For tonight, just stay." He buried his face in her hair and made a sound that might have been agreement, might have been prayer. Outside, the blizzard howled. Inside, 2 broken pieces began to find their way back together. They woke to silence. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world blanketed in white. Sunlight streamed through the cabin's small window, illuminating the tangle of bodies beneath the worn quilt. Sometime during the night, Heliss had turned to face Kalin. Her hand rested on his chest. His arms were wrapped around her as if he feared she might vanish again. For a single, perfect moment, everything was peace. Then Corvin's voice shattered it. "My king! Riders approaching from the south." Kalin was on his feet in an instant, his body shifting into battle-ready tension. He threw open the cabin door. Heliss followed, her heart sinking as she saw what awaited them. 20 wolves in human form, mounted on war horses, their armor bearing the silver serpent of House Blackmere. And at their center, riding side-saddle in a gown of winter white, was Vespera herself. "Husband!" Vespera called, her voice carrying across the snow. "How touching. Playing house with your little whore while your kingdom burns." Kalin's growl vibrated through the frozen air. "You dare?" "I dare quite a lot, actually." Vespera's smile was ice, including bringing evidence of your infidelity to the High Council. A king who abandons his bonded mate to chase a disgraced commoner? The lords will demand your abdication within a fortnight. Our bonding was achieved through poison and dark magic. It is void. Prove it. Vespera's eyes glittered with triumph. Your word against mine, my love, and I have 20 witnesses who watched you speak the vows. Heliss felt the blood drain from her face. If Vespera's accusations stood, Kalin would lose everything: his throne, his power, his ability to protect her and their child. And Vespera would become Queen Regent, free to eliminate her rivals at leisure. "What do you want?" Heliss heard herself ask. Vespera's gaze slid to her with cold amusement. "How sweet. The broodmare thinks she has a voice in this. I asked what you want." "I want what I have always wanted. The throne." Vespera tilted her head. "But I am not unreasonable. Surrender yourself to my custody, Lady Heliss. Come quietly, and I will allow Kalin to keep his crown. Resist, and my men will take you by force, and your precious Alpha King will be branded a traitor before the sun sets." "No." Kalin stepped in front of Heliss, blocking her from Vespera's view. "I will not." "It is not your choice to make." Heliss placed her hand on his arm. Through the bond, she felt his fear, his rage, his desperate need to protect her. But she felt something else too, the fraying edges of his control. The wolf clawing for dominance, the madness that waited just beneath the surface. If she let this become a battle, he would lose himself entirely. "Heliss," his voice broke. "Do not do this." She stepped around him to face Vespera. "You want me?" Heliss said. "Then take me, but you will swear on your blood, before these witnesses, that no harm will come to the king or his allies, and that our child, when it is born, will be raised in safety." "Heliss, no!" Vespera's smile widened. "You have more spine than I expected." "Very well. I swear on my blood." Heliss turned to face Kalin one last time. "I love you," she said softly. "I have loved you since the night you first kissed me in the Eastern Garden. I loved you through exile and heartbreak, and every moment I thought you had betrayed me." She pressed her palm to his chest, feeling his heart shatter beneath her fingers. "Please do not let that love make you foolish." "Heliss, live Kalin, fight, find a way to prove her treachery." She rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his, a kiss that held goodbye and hope in equal measure. "And then, come for me." Before he could stop her, she walked toward Vespera's waiting guards. The last thing she saw before they closed around her was Kalin falling to his knees in the snow, a howl of anguish building in his throat. Vespera's carriage traveled fast, too fast for a pregnant woman's comfort. Heliss braced herself against the jostling, her hands pressed to her belly, praying that the child within could endure just a little longer. They were taking her to Blackmere Keep, Vespera's family stronghold, a fortress of black stone built into the mountains like a wound in the earth. There, away from witnesses and laws, Heliss would quietly disappear. An accident, a stillbirth, a tragic end to a tragic story. Unless she found another way. The bond with Kalin pulsed beneath her skin, stronger than it had ever been. Through it she could feel him following, a distant fire burning closer with every passing moment. He was not giving up. would never give up, but he would not reach her in time. Thinking of your lover? Vespera's voice slithered across the carriage. The false queen sat across from her, perfect and poisonous in her white gown. How romantic, how futile. Why do you hate me? Heliss asked quietly. I never sought the throne, never wanted anything but a quiet life. Because you have what I will never possess. Vespera's mask slipped, revealing the jealousy that festered beneath. A true mate bond, the kind that makes alphas go mad with devotion, the kind that produces powerful heirs. Her lip curled. I was supposed to be queen. I was supposed to have everything. And then you arrived. A nobody from a minor house. And he looked at you, like you were the answer to prayers he did not know he had been speaking. The bond is not something I chose. No. It simply chose you over me. Vesper leaned forward. But soon it will not matter. True mates cannot survive each other's deaths. When you and your brat are gone, Kalin's wolf will destroy him from the inside, and I will rule Thalandor as Queen Regent. The carriage lurched suddenly. Screams erupted from outside, the thunder of hooves, the clash of steel. Vespera's face went pale. No, he could not have. The carriage door was ripped from its hinges, but it was not Kalin who stood in the opening. It was Corvin, bloody and battered but very much alive, and behind him, a small army of wolves she did not recognize, grays and browns and silvers, their eyes gleaming with righteous fury. The northern pack send their regards, Corvin snarled. They do not take kindly to assassins hunting pregnant females in their territory. Vespera scrambled for a hidden blade. Heliss was faster. 4 months of fear, 4 months of hiding. 4 months of protecting the life growing inside her while the world tried to destroy her. It all crystallized into a single moment of absolute clarity. Her hand closed around Vespera's wrist, and deep within her chest, something ancient and powerful stirred. The healing gift she had hidden since childhood, the magic that marked her as other, as unnatural, as something to be feared, erupted from her body in a wave of golden light. But it was not healing this time. It was judgment. Vespera screamed as the light touched her. Not burning, not cutting, but revealing. Every dark deed, every poisoned thought, every act of cruelty laid bare in blazing truth. You cannot hide from what you are, Heliss said, and her voice carried harmonics that shook the very air. You cannot escape the consequences of what you have done. The light spread beyond the carriage, washing over Vespera's guards. One by one they fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the power radiating from the woman they had thought to murder. And then, Kalin was there. He burst through the chaos in wolf form, shifting to human as he reached the carriage. His eyes found Heliss, still standing, still blazing with golden light, still gloriously, impossibly alive. Heliss, he breathed. She swayed on her feet. The power had cost her more than she realized. He caught her before she fell. The aftermath was chaos, but it was their chaos. Vespera was taken into custody by the Northern Pack leaders, who had been watching the Black Mirror movements for weeks and had been waiting for an opportunity to intervene. Her guards, stripped of their weapons, revealed everything under the weight of Heliss's truth light. The poison, the dark magic, the assassination orders. The evidence Kalin needed to dissolve the false bonding and condemn House Blackmere was now undeniable. But Heliss barely registered any of it. She was sitting in the back of a recovered wagon, wrapped in furs, when Kalin climbed in beside her. His face was still streaked with blood, some his, some not. And his eyes held a wildness that spoke of a wolf barely contained. You surrendered yourself, he said hoarsely. You walked into her hands to protect me. You would have done the same. I would have burned the world to reach you. I know. She reached up to touch his face. That is why I had to stop you. Your kingdom needs you, Kalin. Your people need their king. I could not let you destroy everything for my sake. You are my everything. He caught her hand and pressed it to his lips. Do you not understand that yet? The kingdom, the throne, the power, none of it matters without you. Kalin, bond with me. The words came out fierce, desperate. Now, tonight, let me complete the claiming. Let me make you my queen in truth, so that no one can ever challenge your place beside me. I am covered in blood, and exhausted and approximately the size of a small whale. You are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. She laughed, a broken, watery sound. We are in the back of a wagon surrounded by wounded soldiers. I do not care. He pressed his forehead to hers. I have waited 4 months to hold you again. I will not wait another moment to make you mine. So there, in a wagon rattling through the mountains, surrounded by chaos and blood and the aftermath of battle, Kalin tilted his head and bared his throat. The ancient gesture of a wolf offering himself to his mate. Heliss understood. She leaned forward, her lips finding the place where his neck met his shoulder. His pulse thundered beneath her mouth. Her teeth sank into his flesh. The bond exploded between them. Not pain, completion. Two halves of a single soul finally becoming whole. Every memory shared, every emotion laid bare, every secret corner of their hearts open to each other completely. She saw herself through his eyes, not a nobody, but a woman of extraordinary courage, the mother of his children, his fated mate. And he saw himself through hers, not a king who had failed her, but a man who had fought against impossible odds to find her, who loved her with a ferocity that transcended magic and manipulation. When she finally released him, they were both trembling. "My queen," Kalin breathed. "My king," she answered. And the bond between them sang with eternal promise. 2 months later, Heliss gave birth to twins in the royal chambers of Thalandor. A boy with his father's dark hair and his mother's golden gift, light already flickering at his fingertips when he cried. A girl with silver-white hair and eyes that blazed amber when she was hungry, which was often. Kalin held his children with tears streaming down his face, his massive warrior's hands impossibly gentle. "Thank you," he whispered to Heliss, who lay exhausted but radiant in their bed. "For fighting for us. For believing, even when I gave you every reason not to." "I never stopped believing," she said softly. "Even in the darkest moments, something inside me knew. We were always meant to find our way back to each other." The trials of House Blackmere had concluded a week before. Vesper was imprisoned for life in the northern wastes, stripped of her wolf, condemned to live out her days as the nothing she had once called heirless. Her father and brothers had been executed for treason. The kingdom was healing, slowly but surely. And in the great tapestry of Thalandor's history, a new chapter was being woven. The story of a woman who had been publicly destroyed and rose to become queen. Of an alpha king who tore apart his realm to find his true love. Of a bond that could not be broken by poison or politics or even the cruelest twists of fate. Kalin leaned down to kiss her, their children nestled safely between them. "I love you," he said. "In this life and every life that follows, you are my heart, Heliss, my mate, my home." Outside their window, the wolves of Thalandor lifted their voices in celebration, and Heliss smiled, knowing that after everything, the betrayal, the exile, the blizzard, and the one small bed where 2 broken hearts had begun to mend, they had finally found their way home, together, forever. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story.